leader and a friend of mine. I met her, the first time was about either end of 2008, early 2009, thereabout. And she had just come in fresh off the plane with a master's degree from South Africa. And had just come from Uganda with my wife with a bachelor's degree from Bachelor's of Arts with Education. And then the church that we had just joined made her our leader, our youth leader. And my goodness, the way she led with excellence. And she spoke very refined English. And we started following her because she was leading the youth ministry. And that's how our friendship kicked off. And I've seen her grow through the years as a leader of great impact and integrity. She's a soft-spoken lady, but very, very deep and very brilliant. And we are delighted to have her here. Her name is Miss Alpha Akariza. She's the founder of Discovery School International Rwanda. Alpha is started off her career in the development work and market research and in telecommunications. She joined the World Bank and IFC in 2011 and served as a private sector education consultant focusing on advisory services and access to finance. Then she continued in the same line in the education space as she works at the country lead with an NGO called Edify, which was serving affordable private schools with financing and advisory services to improve their business management processes. Then Alpha moved on to try her hand at entrepreneurship. And then she founded the Discovery International School, which currently serves approximately 500 students in 30 classrooms in 2 locations in Kigali. So ladies and gentlemen, here to talk about her leadership legacy through the title, both from bottle tops to impact, a leadership story from Rwanda. Please welcome with me, Miss Alpha Akariza. Hey! There's an entire team out there. Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. My name is Alpha Akariza, as Hassan introduced me. Married to one Erin Mumurenzi. Daughter to one Bertha Kabuto, who is sitting here. And a mother to 3 wonderful, wonderful boys who are represented here by Ramya Murenzi. Our bona fide introverts in the family. I had to beg him to come here. And with me here are the people that make Discovery happen. So I was privileged to dream and to take a risk, but I'm even more privileged to work with people who make the dream come true. So there is no way I could start without honoring them before all of you, honoring my family who've been the wind beneath my wings, and all these people who put their hand to the task, who are the engine of the work we do at Discovery. And I think in essence, my talk could end here, right? But she likes stories, so I'll just stay for the stories. But the Discovery story is embodied in the team you see here and in my family. It is how we've been able to do the work that we do. In our team, we have a very diverse team. We have British-bred Gloria over there, you know. We have Jen S. Taha, who brings the vibes and upgrades me all the time. We have the wonderful, a woman of all seasons, Elsie, always ready to encourage people. She's responsible for people and culture at Discovery. We have Rosine, who is just that quiet engine of the work that we do. Divine brings the sun along with Françoise, looks like an introvert, but is the life of the Discovery Party. I have Cynthia, who is a quiet leader, very hardworking, very articulate, a lawyer, who changed to a passionate educator. We have Maîtresse Vanessa, who literally runs our Kibagabaga campus with very little help from me, a true leader. We have Christy, an emerging leader, very excited to have her. Alain is responsible for our extracurricular activities, football, basketball, everything, you name it. He holds the character development together, especially for our young boys. Monsieur Adelar heads primary. I'm privileged to work really closely with him on the academic side to bring excellence to Discovery. Miss Celestine. She's the Cambridge curriculum queen in lower primary and gets children to read and write very quickly, no matter what age you give them to her. We have Miss Nadine, who was always the reluctant leader, but quietly influences so many people at Discovery, and fluently bilingual. If she speaks English, you think she doesn't know French. When she speaks French, you think she doesn't know English. And we have Alex, who is responsible for Kinyarwanda language and culture. We are proud Rwanda, and it's a very important part of our philosophy at Discovery. We have Miss Claudine, who carries the Francophone section. I'm privileged to work with fluent French speakers, Congolese, Gabonese, Rwandans, Ugandans, Kenyans, British people, Americans, name it. And it's just been an honor to learn from them and to have them put their imprint on the Discovery work. And we have Miss Laura, who works miracles with our candidates. Whenever my candidates are with her, I sleep at night, I don't check, and they always deliver with flying colors. So this is the team that represents so many other people that work with us. Please appreciate them for me. Thank you so much. So the title of my presentation is Borotops to Impact, and you'll understand why. So we've moved since the video, we've moved from 1 to 2 branches, from about 470 students, and Hassan was generous enough to round it off to 500. I like it. And I should say that over 1,000 students have gone through Discovery over the past 8 years or so. And right now we have close to 80 workers, and if I include temporary people, interns, we sometimes hit 100. We have 32 classes. We're at 100% capacity. We barely have offices. And we are praying and planning for the next phase of our growth. And indeed, we believe that greater things lie ahead for Discovery. Amen, Discovery people? So how did it start? A lot of us here are young-ish or young at heart, and maybe that's the question. How did it all start? And we have to go back and, why do we exist? Are we just plants that will grow, die, become manure, so that other plants can grow, right? Are we like animals? Could I have been a cat or a dog? Why? What's the purpose? What's the point of it all? And we have to, and for me, these were fundamental questions when I was growing up. I had to kind of make sense of my story. Why was I here? And when I was in university and the book came out, The Purpose-Driven Life, I really wanted to read it because I wanted to understand what on earth am I here for? And that's on the cover of the book. And one of my greatest friends, I took a minibus twegerane, and at that point, I saw another girl sitting reading The Purpose-Driven Life. And I could not imagine that in Kigali, as I was leaving Chimichanga to go to town, to attend a concert by Alexis Dusabe, that in the bus, there would be someone reading a Rick Warren book. And I was intrigued. Right now it's common, but at the time it wasn't. So I was so intrigued, and I didn't talk to her, but we later met at my uncle's place, and she was a family friend of my uncle, and she became my bridesmaid because I just sensed we were kindred spirits. We wanted to find the purpose of life. And so we are really good friends up to now. But my point is that I was just so hungry and thirsty to really live a life that had meaning, because there were parts of my life that didn't make sense. Does anyone have parts of their lives that don't make sense? There are parts of my life that really did not make sense. The math would not math, right? So what I've noticed is that as I was doing my research, even plants have purpose. Do you know that plants communicate? Dogs have purpose. Cats have purpose. Right? Dogs are loyal. Dogs protect. We have our wonderful dog, Skipper. It's been with us since Ramya was a baby. It's 13 years old. And Skipper is a loyal member of our family. Right? So if dogs and plants have purpose, what about babies? Right? And so if by God's grace, the X and Y chromosome, by some rare statistical probability, you were conceived, right? And then you did not die at 3 weeks, 4 weeks pregnancy, as apparently 50% of pregnancies end up. So you were not miscarried, right? You did not die at the stillbirth, right? And you were born. If plants are not wasted, why would a human life be wasted? And that's my last born's feet, and mine and my husband's hands, you know? And we're trying to make a little bit of a heart around his feet. But when I think of Enzi, my last born, my baby, I prophetically see greatness in him, right? But it's because it's my baby, right? And you are someone's baby. And if maybe your parents were not loving, at least you're God's baby. And so there is a prophetic greatness in you. And these are things that you have got to preach to yourself and encourage yourself in the Lord. Because sometimes no one is going to encourage you. So I'm always, sometimes I talk to my colleagues, they're like, how are you? And I say, I'm encouraging myself in the Lord. You know? So I grew up in a small, interesting town. I grew up in many places, but I was born in Kenya, like I said. Mommy, do you recognize this? Wahamenye? Uncle Wahamenye? Ahahan. This is Ginger. Mm-hmm. And this is the famous, I think it looks like Main Street. I don't know if it's Main Street. Is it Main Street? So there's a point, some of my vivid memories, I was living on Main Street. And upstairs, there were apartments. I don't know if they were really apartments or small boxes that hosted people. And so there were shops downstairs selling, but there was a video, remember the video tape where you would borrow. So there was, mami, jitkwaganu muhinde hasi. Best quality. So there was best quality. He sold everything, including videotapes. So, so we lived in a 2-roomed house up there. And there were about 3 to 5 families on any given time. And it was a very happy house, and maybe 9 children. There's a time we hired a nanny I can never forget. And she came in, do you know dinner time and bath time? And I had a cousin called Andrew, and he used to cry. So the girl came, but by 5 a.m. she had left. She could not handle, you know? So, in this house, I thought we were rich, you know? I really... Because when you're happy, you're rich, Okay? So, only later do I look at Main Street and I'm like, hey, my times were hard. But at that time, I was rich, okay? I believed I came from a rich family. Never mind that mommy shared the bed with like 3 cousins and my brother and myself. But it was okay because I didn't like sleeping alone, so we were rich. And even we shared the bed with our mother. And it was okay. Some people slept in the sitting room. In fact, someone slept in the kitchen. Now I think it was a fire hazard. And I keep asking, we were up there, and the kitchen was up there. Someone slept in it, and there was only one exit. So God kept us. And if you notice up there are no garde-fous. So there were no, now when I'm looking at a house, what, Vision City, I'm always like, it's not safe for my kids, my boys, they will climb, they will do what. So my cousin one day climbed up there and slept on that edge, you know? And, you know, my mom came up and she was like, Andrew, easy. So, because if you scared him, he would fall the other side. But this place was always there. It was open and accessible, and we were safe. So, so they call him. He comes slowly. Guess by the time he got to her, she walked. So, but she had to really, you know, just easy. So why am I telling you this? When you hear a master's degree in the UK, the famous accent, you have to face your story. And this is the story. You know? So that was Main Street. I want to go back. My brother-in-law went and he's like, the houses are short, but at the time they were high. So I used to mbamuri etage, but it was a short house that was that had 2 layers. So I really have fond memories of Ginger, but apparently times were hard. But I thank God for my mom because she made it feel like we were happy and we were rich. Even though sometimes we walked to school, took the bicycle, got lost, and at some point, she had to send us to boarding school when I was about 7.5, because at least it was safer there. And even then, sometimes we went in Kwejirane or asked the rich Banyarwanda there to drive us to school. So, these were the toys of the time, right? Who has played with these? These are the most sophisticated toys. Yeah? So, my son here gets Legos, and he does not know the power of Buchokolo. And we used to collect these things. And the more you had, the better. But if you had the one for Mirinda Fruity, or the Fanta one, and then there were times when we would scratch them and you could... So, our stories are made of ordinary things like bottle tops, you know? And maybe my son will have to find a way to tell a story about his Legos that I buy when I travel to the US. I don't know if he can have as great a story as Buchokolo. I don't think so. So we played with these things and we got so creative. We sorted them, we flattened them, we did different things with them, and we made them make sense. And we created toys. We used to get empty cans and cook them and play mommy and daddy. Yeah? So in that, as children, we would make sense of our world and turn trash into treasured toys. So the same thing with you. When you look at your story, are there things that are like bottle tops that someone else will trash? In fact, they're an environmental hazard. I don't know. But if there are things in your life that are like bottle tops, something can come out of that to make your story. So I love these things. But anyway, let me not delay. And then I love shoes. You have to make sense of your story. Now, my mom believed which shoes were useful. Which ones? The Bata. Oh my goodness. And in fact, they had to be 2 sizes larger. Kugira ngo zikuriremo. So you're putting on oversized clothes, oversized shoes, kugira ngo ubikuriremo. But I always had a stylish anointing in me. So I dreamt of the white ballet shoes. So when I look at children today putting on white ballet shoes, anyhow, I'm like, what a privilege that you are not subject to butter. And when you were in boarding school, those things would get torn and tattered after 3 months, right? And sometimes you'd even outgrow them, but you'd have to keep putting them on until your parents came to take you. So a lot of people, when they see me today, I do not look like certain parts of my story. In fact, there are certain dark parts of my story that I cannot share. But when someone does not know my story, they're like, wow, what a lucky girl. Numunyama hirwe. Iwabo baramu fashije. Etc. etc. Kandi baramfashije byo byo. Kubera ifite umubyeyi gukunda nta kindi kirenze ibyo. Right? So, and I'm so glad I get to honor her here. Arahari hano. Mami haguruka. Yeah. So the next slide, it's a very sensitive slide. I need you to put your phones away. Don't take photos. Yeah? It's a very important slide. Okay? And as you can see, my mom aspired to the black shoes. I was dreaming of the white ballet shoes. In fact, there was a little white dress that I knew could match the white ballet shoes. But lo and behold, the shoes I wore. So, no phones. But I remember someone shared this photo. I said, but mommy, we were poor. And she was like, now go busy. So my mom is framing this. Apparently I had the best shoes in that village somewhere. And she was like, Uravugichi? So I am so glad I get to wear these shoes today. And I have a friend who told me her, Alpha, do you know, and so she was like, an uncle of hers met her yarakuze. And I go, "Wini mwa mwana?" Yes. Ngwimana z'abakobwa imana y'abakobwa ibaho. So perhaps the same testimony applies to me. But I thank God that we do not look like our past. Yeah? So I don't know what your story is, but it is imperative that you make sense of it. And that is my leadership story. You have to make sense. I don't know which parts there are. There are certain parts you can't share. There are dark parts there. But you have got to make sense of your story like I made sense of these shoes. And to know this is who I am, this is where I come from, and how do I move on from here. In fact, my husband has never seen this photo. Because surely, God loves you guys because I realize it will help the message. It is only for the purposes of the kingdom that I have been able to share the story, to share this photo before you take any screenshots or whatever. But you must face your story. Take courage and face your story. If you ask how I did it, the first thing is I had to face my story. You and your God. Okay? So I have to keep telling myself these things. These are the cards I've been given. I did not choose the family I was born to. I did not choose the country I was born into. There was a time when we were in school in Uganda and they say Kanyarwanda and you want to hide. But you did not choose to be a Munyarwanda. Luckily now, we are proud of our identity. Anywhere you go, they're like, are you from Rwanda? Oh, tell us about it. But it wasn't the case, you know. When I was in primary school and the bodies were floating, all the Ugandans were looking at us because they couldn't eat their fish, you know. So my point is that there are parts of your story that are worth mourning. There are parts of your story that are worth funerals. But you can only cry for a time. And then you have got to decide what is going to happen next. There are parts of your story that are privileged. I'm privileged in some ways. In other ways, I had to put on gumboots. Okay? So there are parts of your story in which you are privileged, but there are parts of your story in which you have lost, in which the math doesn't math, in which you're an orphan, perhaps. Or like me, you come from a family where your parents got divorced, your parents got separated, your father was in and out and altogether not present. And you have got to make sense of that. And in your story, you're always the protagonist. And you have to decide if you become the eternal victim or the overcomer. So sometimes when I attempt, or sometimes I think I feel sorry for myself, I don't have to look very far. I look at Hassan gathering us here, an orphan, and then Joan, another orphan who married each other. And, you know, and they are mentoring me and teaching me how they got married before me, so I learn from them. So if these two orphans who married each other can gather us here today, what about you? So I'm not saying that what you went through is simple. But I'm saying God continues to write the next pages and the next chapters. So either you need courage to overcome, or you need humility to appreciate the privilege that you have. Am I making sense? Okay. So I won't get into this because I think I've explained it. Maybe I'll just say that my mother lost everything 4 times in her life and had to start afresh. And I was there for a lot of those starting afresh seasons, but the last one is the one I remember most because nari mfite ubwenge. So in the last season after her divorce, everything, she had debt, she had basically financial problems that come out of that kind of situation. And it got to a point where she had to sell, I don't forget this, she had to sell her only house. And out of that, since today is about moms, I will continue. And I went, I saw the people who bought, I don't know why she was taking me, that was like I wish she'd brought me to a GLS conference. But I went to witness how she was selling our home. And she signed the papers. It was a happy home. It was in Kabeza. And she got money and she said, "Muriya amafaranga ngiye kwishyura amadeni. Ayandi ndayaguha uzishyure school fees South Africa." Right? So when people say Alpha is a South Africa, arranged the UK, someone somewhere sold their house to make that possible for me. And in that sense, I am privileged. I didn't want her to come because I was like, it will be so emotional. But I was like, what is it? How do I talk about my story without the role of my mother in it? It doesn't make sense. I would be doing something for LinkedIn, not for people. So you have to work with your story. Those are the kind of things you have to realize who has sacrificed for you in a small or a big way. Who has paved a way for you? You cannot waste the opportunities they've given you. right? It might be your parents, it might be the pastors, it might be your friends, whoever it is. My mom was so busy, but the other person who really helped me along the way, in a quiet way, was my grandmother. I couldn't find a photo of her, but maybe because she didn't move, she was just so present. So whenever I went to her house, she'd be like, Ngwino, 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 Charanga. And just her quiet presence would make you feel so loved, so whole, and so restored. So, do you have a grandmother who has loved you like that? Can you waste that love? That is what calls you to greatness, because you're not a plant or a cat or a dog. So you have to question your self-narratives. What stories are you telling yourself about yourself? Because the same story could be told in which you're the eternal victim. And the same story could be told in which you're the overcomer. So you have to edit your story the right way and write the new pages in a way that will make sense for your future and the prophetic calling upon your life. And you have to tell yourself the godly version of yourself, or of your story. And your story is the only one you have. You can't work with Hassan's story. That's not your story. Yeah? You can't work with my story. That's not your story. There is a miracle in your story. And you have to start there. And there are always two parts to your story. The one you did not choose, and the one you're choosing every day. Am I making sense? And sometimes you have the cards that you're dealt with, and that is it. But there's a certain part of your story that you are responsible for writing. And that is how I started this journey of saying, what do I do with my life, given my gumboots and loving mother? So the first point, if I was talking about points, not stories, is you've got to face your story. That's the first point. Number 2, you have to grow from your story. You have got to grow. You cannot just stay stuck and defined by it. You have to grow from your story. And make sure you're in the right place. How do you grow? Is your spirit in the right place? Is your mind in the right place? Yeah, you're at GLS, your mind is in the right place. Is your body in the right place? Is your heart in the right place? And the whole quest of the walk of the Christian is to always be in the right position so that God can fulfill his purposes in your life. So you cannot be in the wrong place at the wrong time and expect divine appointments. You will get cast appointments, if I should put it that way. So growing up, how did I grow? I just tried to be in the right, I tried to be in the right places so that perhaps the favor that is upon other people could come on me. So how did I grow? Luckily, as the Lord would have it, CLA, the big tent, was in front of my home. But I gave my life to Christ in S6. So because CLA was in front of my home, the music would play, it sounded nice-ish, and so I'd go down, right? But there are many people who lived around the big tent that did not go there. So at some point, our home became an extension of the big tent. And the youth, would be like, we don't have water, go to Mama Alpha's, okay? The sandwiches don't have this, go to Mama Alpha's. So I just was in the right place. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, are you in the right place? And then ask yourself, where is your heart? Is your heart in the right place? Are you truly seeking God? Are you seeking to serve? Is your mind in the right place? The Bible says we shall be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And sometimes we are feeding our minds things that are toxic. So where is your mind positioned? So that perhaps, should your opportunity come, it finds you prepared. So a lot of times we are unprepared for opportunity and then we think we are unlucky. And then we say, Hassan Imana iramukunda. No, Hassan is constantly prepared. Kuburyo na opportunity iguye Hassan abaya, he's always prepared. So are we positioned for God's purpose and provision? Because God cannot position us, we are the ones to submit to Him. Yeah? So we are transformed by environments, by encounters, by relationships, by knowledge, by the renewing of your minds. That is how I grew, if you want to know. So when I got to campus, knowing a house was sold, I got my mother's photo, I put it on the shelf, and somehow when I was away, I became more passionate about being Rwandan. Nanifutaga seche, akadrapo, my mom's photo, and I used to play a lot of traditional music, so I know a lot of Masamba's songs, because I actually felt more Rwandan when I wasn't in Rwanda. So I put her photo there so that in case people are going partying, I would... So, so my point is that even when I was at university, I had to always ask myself, am I in the right place? What am I doing here? And obviously, Mom grew to trust me. She didn't even ask me for report cards. And at some point, it's like, nobody's asking for anything. I could do anything I want. So I intentionally sought out community. I intentionally sought out fellowships that would bring me up while I was in university. So if you're young here, please make sure you're in places like these where your mind is constantly challenged and renewed. And even if you're old, by the way, because I continue to do that to this day. I would say that in the church I attended in university in South Africa, it was the first time I saw pictures of healthy families. Because unfortunately, in my family, both on my mother's side and on my father's side, the family, there's no healthy family. There's barely. Duheruka healthy family kuri sogokuru na nyogokuru. I'm sorry to say. So I kind of thought, this thing can't work. Nibyo bazungu, nibyo muri film. So when I was in South Africa, because I was in a different environment, South Africa is not the place where you will be inspired about family. In fact, it's one of the most promiscuous countries. But because I was looking to be in the right place, I was able to see a picture of godly family while I was out there. And in that jungle of Johannesburg, God was doing a work in me, right? And the journey continued at CLA and all of that, and I've continued to be intentional about growing from my story, me and God. And I encourage you to do the same. And I will say that I'm an avid reader. I'm those people who, because I didn't grow up with a father, I had to co-opt mentors like Rick Warren, John Maxwell, so that they could father me through their books, right? In terms of mothering, I had my mother, but I needed to be fathered in some way. And unfortunately, a lot of my uncles died. My mom had just 2 brothers. One died, the other was young and in a different country. So I had no male role models. But I realized in hindsight that whenever I was doing the John Maxwell books, the Stephen Covey material, the Rick Warren material, I was actually finding ways to father myself through the work of these men. So I encourage you, find ways to grow yourself. And when I landed on the GLS material, I have been a disciple. And you can say I have recruited other disciples who came here, and we come every year. We come every year. So, be intentional about your growth. You cannot grow by mistake. I would say discovery came, in essence, out of a GLS session, if I can look back. The trigger. I think it was 2014. The session was called Crucial Conversations by someone called Joseph Greene. And I watched it, I don't know if it was a DVD or it was CCR. And I remember at that point, I needed to have a crucial conversation, but as we have been raised in Rwanda, ntushanuka, ntuvuga, ntureba ibikureba, niba ufite ikibazo ku kazi urasezera, ntugikemura, kandi n'ubundi urabana na mama we ntacyo ubaye, cyangwa se umugabo we ntacyo aba yazagutunga usezere. Niba ufite ikibazo urasezera. Siko bimeze? Ushaka ahandi niba batagushaka. So I had a challenge at work. We had this global team meeting, and for the first time, I wasn't invited. And I remember thinking, let me just plan and leave. But then I watched that session, and the man talked about that there are certain conversations you must have. You can't just quit. Sometimes you need to quit, but you can't quit because you're afraid of having to have a difficult conversation. So I watched it and I psyched myself up and I called the vice president of HR from the US and I set up a conference call and I said, I want to know why I wasn't invited to the meeting. To this day, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't think I would do it again. So we talked, they were like, oh, we didn't think you would want to come, I said, no, allow me the privilege to decline your invitation. But don't decide for me that I didn't want to come. So I had a 9-month-old baby, and somehow the theory was that I didn't want to come, or as a mother with a baby, I was becoming a liability. So, second baby, the other one was like 2 years, so it was a bit much, I guess. So anyhow, I get off the call, and within 5 minutes, I have the invitation to go to the US for the team meeting. And now I have to go, right? So I get the ticket, I go. So while I'm there, my boss tells me, oh, there's this person I want you to meet. He doesn't want to partner with us, but you meet with him. I want him to meet someone from Rwanda, but he doesn't want to do our work. He's a successful businessman, passionate about schools, my friend, but I just want him to meet you. So that's how my boss organized my encounter with my partner at Discovery. And I went to this lunch and I said, you know what, I could convince this guy to invest in the organization I was working for. So I go, I convince, I pitch, do what, And the guy is looking at me and he's like, tell me your story. So I'm like, which part? Do I go to Main Street? Do I go to Jinja? Do I go to Kabiefe in Western Kenya? Do I go to Kitale? Do I go to boarding school? So anyway, I just talked a little bit, whatever came up. And he's like, you've not been educated in America? I said, no. You did not grow up here? I said, no. Why are you educated? I said, I've been born and bred on the African continent. I only did my master's degree in the UK. And he's like, how is it? I've always had the impressions that Africans are just so behind. I said, well, that's not quite the case. Yeah. So then he said, what do you want to do with your life? And like I said, I was never prepared for that question, but I said, I'm my kids, I'm worried about my kids' education, I had to say something. But when you have 2 small kids, the only thing you think of are your kids. So he said, put that business concept on paper and send it to me. But I had done so many business concepts. I was in the NGO world. So I knew that you just send it and, 90% of the time, nothing will come out of it. So I do the thing and I said, you know what, but there's a principle that I'd like to share. You have to be diligent. Because those 90% of the times that it didn't work, I always did it as though it would work. So you have to serve in your workplace as unto the Lord, not unto man. You do not work for a human boss. You are preparing for your next assignment. And you have to be found faithful in the current assignment in order to be promoted by God to the next assignments. So when I did those proposals, I was like, I needed to be formatted. I need to be like, and I really wanted, my mom knows I would stay up all night trying to perfect these reports and proposals, knowing that 90% of the time, nothing would come out. But I always thought there might be that one time. And perhaps the Lord sees the work that I'm doing, and it is a sweet-smelling fragrance, an offering in His presence. And indeed, along my journey, I got a teaching that said, your work is an act of worship. And are you worshiping faithfully in your work? I do not say this because I lead people. It's something that I've always believed in, that my work is an act of worship, a service unto God that must be found worthy of the calling that is upon my life. So I believe that work is an act of worship, that indeed it is a privilege to work and a blessing. But largely because my mom is a hard worker and I had been privileged to partake of the blessing that came out of hard work. So there's no assignment you would give me that I would take lightly, because I knew it is a privilege to work, to have the opportunity to put your hands to something. Because some people do not have the opportunity, one, to have hands, two, to put their hands to a worthy cause. Am I making sense? So because I had been diligent in just being excellent for the sake of being excellent, sometimes I was just excellent for the sake of being excellent. And I always remember the scripture about Daniel, when they said Daniel was 10 times better than the peers that were not non-believers at the time. So I said, no, in order to please the king, Daniel had to be 10 times better to please a pagan king, because he was doing it as unto the Lord and not unto the king. And that guided me. So a lot of people, even at work, they will say, what drives you? It's because we are doing this as unto the Lord and not unto man. This is the life at Discovery. We are deeply committed to creating an environment where the adults thrive so that the children can thrive. So serve with your story. I've been serving the Discovery team because of this story. Find your pocket of impact and lead from your healing parts. Do not lead from your wounded parts. We all have wounded parts, but as you heal, serve from your healing parts. This is a journey that we are on. I don't do it perfectly, but I'm committed to continue to serve from my healing parts, because God continues to perfect that which concerns me and that which concerns the team, that which concerns Discovery. So serve with your story. This is a house in Nairobi that I stayed at called Entim Sidai. You see that tree? Apparently, how do I use the clicker? Anyway, you see that big tree? So the guy told me this is a parasitic tree. I didn't know trees could be parasites. So that tree takes life away from all the plants around it. And it takes on the form of those plants. And eventually the plants, so I didn't know that you could get plants that destroy other plants, but I think my mom knows that because she's an agriculturalist at base. So in that principle, the walnut tree destroys all the plants around it. Going back to your garden, in order to tend your garden, you have to uproot the parasite trees and the walnut trees. But some of us have walnuts in our hearts, right? And we need to uproot the walnuts, the wounded parts. We need to heal them so that we can be more like the marigold. The marigold is a special kind of flower that gives life to all the plants around it. And this is what leadership is. It is life-giving and it is redemptive. So wherever you are, you have to be a life-giving force to the people around you. Things should not die around you. You know? So work on yourself so that you can bring life. Think abundantly. Don't think in terms of scarcity. Train yourself to bring redemption wherever you are if you're a Christian. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life. Leadership, in my view, is serving in God's redemptive purpose wherever He has placed you. So what does this mean? If you're like my former nanny and you're Marie-José, and you are helping Alpha to raise her 3 children, you are serving God's redemptive purpose. If you're Joanne and you quit the bank to take care of your children and support your husband's ministry, you're a leader serving in God's redemptive purpose where He has placed you. So just because you're not called CFO, chief cleaning superintendent, leadership is about redemptive service. It is not about position or title. So this is the lovely team I get to serve. I labor with God every day so that I may be a redemptive influence to them. And may He support me in that endeavor. We believe that every child at Discovery has a divine appointment, and every adult at Discovery is on a divine mission. This is a culture we are building. If you're leading a team, understand that culture embeds excellence. If you're too busy to build a positive, life-giving culture, you're too busy for the impact you seek to have. You're too busy for the results you seek if you neglect the team culture, the team community. And I'll talk about visible versus invisible legacy. I hinted on it. Leadership is not here. What I'm doing here is not leadership. We need to differentiate public speaking from leadership. I can be a great public speaker and an incompetent leader. And I can be a great leader and never stand here. So just because I stand here doesn't necessarily make me a leader. Marie-José, who raised my children for 5 years before we married her off, is a leader because she held our family together. Am I making sense? So whichever department you're in, you're a leader there because you're serving a redemptive purpose in that team. And you have to continue writing your story. Okay? Writing that redemptive, the new chapters of redemption in that story. That place where you serve. That place you serve with excellence. In your home, in your extended family, wherever you go, people must just feel like God was here. We are healing because the presence of God is in this person. Do not serve from your wounds. You know, victims become parasites. Did you know that? Yes. If you don't heal, sometimes you might think, I don't have to heal, but if you don't heal, you become a parasite. You take life away from people because they have to keep carrying you and managing your drama, counseling you. You're just making life heavy for everyone because bagomba kuguheka, bagomba. Wahetse. So the Bible says we've been given the ministry of reconciliation and that we are Christ's ambassadors. So we are reconciling ourselves to God, reconciling ourselves to one another, and reconciling ourselves to the environment around us. So you have been given the ministry of reconciliation. Heal yourself. Yeah? So write the next chapters and be a marigold, right? Be a beautiful marigold. Marigolds bring life to those around them. Work on yourself so that you can be a life-giving force. Indeed, Christ in you is the hope of glory. So these are some of the lovely chapters of discovery and of my life. We've had children graduate several years. This was our biggest graduation group last year. We are graduating an even bigger group next year. No, they graduated this year. The next group is graduating next year. So that is Mom and me and my brother, and the white dress that would have matched the white shoes. Eh? Yeah, and so for Mom, she was writing her story then, yeah? And these are the new chapters that emerge. Yeah? And she could do her own talk. And we are dreaming for an even more beautiful chapter with my firstborn son, Ramya. And the next chapter of my life has again to do with what God is calling me to do in his life. And with that, I encourage you, our stories are not just ours to tell, but to inspire others to write their own. Thank you so much.